Welcome to SUAANGAN. I'm your host, Janine Blake. On today's program, we have a profile of Pauline Gordon for SUAANGAN's Our People, Our Support series. Pauline Gordon is the Assistant Deputy Minister of Education and Culture for the Department of Education, Culture and Employment. She began her career in the education field as a classroom assistant. She became a teacher, a vice principal, an instructor at the Arctic College, an assistant director, and later the director for the Beaufort Delta Education Council.
Pauline comes from a big family who lived mainly in Inuvialuit, but also spent a lot of time on the land when she was a small child.
I was born at Stanton on the Anderson River. My parents were Gus and Jean Tardif, Kisan, and I was raised in Inuvialuit. I'm the 8th in the family of 11 children, and we spent a lot of time when we were younger on the land. But we also, the majority of us went to residential school.
Like many small children in the 50s, she was sent away from her home, her family, and her parents to residential school. As an adult, she still feels the effects of being torn away from her family.
The residential school experience was quite traumatic, and I didn't realize until just recently how traumatic it was. I always thought that it was an experience that I could put behind me and move on, but I now have recognized in the past 2 or 3 years that it was really quite an experience that affected all of my life. And
in 1995, Pauline co-facilitated a workshop on residential schools.
Residential schools shared with us some of their experiences, how it impacted on their personal lives, how it has impacted on society in general through.
Pauline's brother, Richard Tardif, participated in this session and talks about their treatment at the hostel.
They used to treat the kids. I mean, you're just a young kid, and yet you could remember all that. Like, I remember all my supervisors, my teachers, but how they used to treat you, like if you're being a bad boy, you know, let you stand in the corner, or, you know, give you a strapping in the hand.
Although life in the residential school system was very difficult, Pauline had an easier time in grade 5. A teacher named Mr. Elliott became someone who Pauline would still think of as changing the way she thought about herself. He was one of the first people in the system to treat her and her classmates as individuals.
He demonstrated the ability to see tolerance in a society at that time that didn't actually portray that, because we were in that tried to demonstrate to us that there were clear differences because of religion. We were at a school that was a single building, Sam School, yet it was separated by religion. A wing was the Anglican wing and B wing was the Catholic wing. And we weren't allowed to speak to the students from the Anglican side, but Mr. Elliott was able to break that down, and he initiated spelling bees and had us go over to the A wing side. And at first I remember so many of us being a little terrified because we had heard so many horror stories about how they would treat us and how we would reach hell and damnation because we weren't supposed to talk to Anglicans because we were Catholic. So he demonstrated through experiences that he led us through that, you know, we have to learn tolerance in a society that has so many differences and is so diverse. So I think throughout my career, those are the things that I remember so vividly, that somebody had that foresight so early on when it wasn't the thing to do. He also demonstrated to us through the experiences he afforded us that, you know, we could do whatever it is that we wanted to do. And I think those were the days when we weren't recognized as individuals, and he saw the individuality in us.
Another person that inspired Pauline in her early years was Father Posha in Grandin College. He encouraged the students at the college to believe that they could excel in anything that they chose to do.
When we were selected to go to Grandin College, it was based on academics and our achievements and our abilities. And when we went through that system, Father Posha was the administrator then, and he at all times told us how important we were as individuals. He respected our individuality. He respected us as fellow human beings, and he told us that we were just as as important as those folks that were portrayed in the curriculum in those days, which wasn't necessarily reflective of the population in the north. So because the majority of the students there were Aboriginal and very few were non-Aboriginal, he instilled in us a sense of pride in who we are, just by demonstrating to us that, you know, if we thought that we wanted to achieve, we could, and if we set our minds to it, we could do anything that anyone else in Canadian society. There are folks like Stephen Kakfu, who's now the Premier, Ethel Blond and Andrew, who's the Member of Parliament for the Western Arctic, or for the NWT, I'm sorry. Jim Antoine, Michael Miltonberger, Judy Tucho, Cindy Gilday. A lot of folks that are now in very prominent positions and have demonstrated leadership capabilities through their work.
As a little girl, she was torn away from her family and placed in an education system that did not reflect her language or her culture. It's surprising then that she would later work in a system that brought back terrible memories of isolation from her family and the lifestyle she knew. When we come back, we'll see how as a young adult she decided to work as a classroom assistant at the Moose Kerr School in Aklavik, and how this position would be only the first step on a journey that would take her farther than she knew.
SUAANGAN will return after these messages for more of the profile on Pauline Gordon.
We're back with our profile of Pauline Gordon, an Inuvialuit who has made education her life's work.
I started off as an employment officer at 19, and then I was able to get into the school as a classroom assistant, and I spent 2 years as a classroom assistant, but I was given an assignment to oversee special needs children, so I had a class of my own. And the regional office indicated at that point that they would provide me with support, but because their office was in Inuvik, I wasn't getting the type of support that I thought was necessary. So I was basically running a class with nothing but a letter of authority to teach.
Pauline decided to get her teaching certificate, and she completed the teacher education program at the Arctic College in Fort Smith in 1980. Her first posting as a teacher was at the Sir Alexander Mackenzie School in Inuvik.
From the start, Pauline felt that it was important to include the Inuvialuit and Gwich'in cultures in the classroom.
Sometimes it becomes pretty difficult to get somebody in and teach things to the kids.
The elders in our region are important resources, and Pauline brought them into the classroom for her students.
Well, I think the greatest advantage is that you can never really teach someone else your own culture. Like, it doesn't matter how many courses or how many degrees they have behind their name in you know, that culture. If they come up and say, well, I took a course on Inuit, but that doesn't make them an expert. Like, you can never ever really truly know a culture unless you've lived it.
Elders coming in here to show them their dances and songs and stories. What sort of response did you get from your children?
Oh, my kids loved to dance. They were so excited. I can tell you, though, in September I had, you know, half my class, 3/4 of my class is boys, so they tend to be a little bit more shy. So in September when they came in, they were a little bit leery about trying new things. And whenever we do the dance, even just last Saturday when they were invited to dance at the talent show, we were practicing in here, and like, they didn't want to sit down and work afterwards. Like, they're so...
Our history is documented mainly through the oral tradition, and because of this, we need to utilize the people that this tradition has been passed on.
As a teacher, she brought elders into the classroom. When she became the vice principal at SAMS, Pauline still believed strongly that the children should be taught about their culture.
Giving them survival skills too, I think, is necessary. It's good to have all the other agencies come out, but it's also a good opportunity to utilize our elders who have a lot of resources about land skills and other, even scientific things.
Here she is at a grade 3 camp just outside of Inuvik, where the staff brought the students to learn from elders about living on the land.
Pauline started as a classroom assistant and obtained her teaching certificate to become a teacher. After some years in the classroom, she decided to obtain her degree.
Over the course of a number of years, summer school and intercession. No, I didn't go to intercession. Summer school and a year of leave without pay, and then a year of leave with pay, I was able to obtain my degree from the University of Saskatchewan. And following that, I was able to obtain a position with Aurora College. It was Arctic College at the time, and I was with the field-based teacher education program as an instructor. Following that, I was the vice principal at Sam School in Inuvik, and then from there I was the assistant director for the Beaufort Delta Education Council, and then I became their director, and then I moved here.
Tell us about a normal day in the office.
I usually start my day a lot earlier than most because I need that time alone here to just get caught up, because once the day starts here, then it's just hectic until the time you leave. So I usually come in between 6:30 and 7 and try to catch up on email. We have 2 email systems that I usually have to check in because you're away sometimes and they just kind of clutter your system. And then I have reading and signing books that usually are piled up high here, either correspondence that comes from the minister's office that you have to follow through on, or correspondence from people that are in the field, or folks that you work with on a continuous basis. And I do that the first thing in the morning just to get it cleared away so that I could start my day fresh. And normally I'm meeting from the time the folks come in until I set a limit, I guess. And it's usually meeting about specific activities generally that we plan for sometimes, and others that are unplanned for. And so things that, such as meeting with Western Consortium Protocol partners from Western Canada, those are set. And then you have things that are sometimes unexpected. If you have a situation, for instance, in a jurisdiction that you have to go and try to provide support to the jurisdictional staff, then those are kind of sudden and you have to leave. So sometimes you try to plan as best as you can for a full week of activities, but most times they never pan out exactly as you had hoped. So sometimes there's travel that you don't anticipate. I could walk in the morning and be told that I have to travel to such and such a community either the next day or that very day. So sometimes your time isn't really your time.
When we return to SUAANGAN in our profile of Pauline Gordon, we'll talk more about her current position as an ADM for Education, Culture and Employment.
Mark Cleveland is the Deputy Minister of Health and Social Services. He was the Deputy Minister for the Department of Education, Culture and Employment when Pauline began her work in Yellowknife until a few months ago. We talked to him about Pauline and her work style.
She and I worked quite closely together on a number of issues. They ranged from helping to make sure that as many kids as possible could access school in their home community. That was one of the major areas. Secondly, to ensure that culture, language, and heritage are a critical element and included in all of the programs in every community. Those were a couple of the major issues. We worked together through teacher strikes and a whole bunch of other things. But those are kind of 2 major areas that we worked on together. Pauline is a very committed, very hard-working individual who is determined that she's going to provide the best opportunities for those around her. And she's hard-driving, she's critical of herself, she pushes everyone around her to do better. At the same time, she's extremely compassionate and very caring about those she works with.
We asked about some of the challenges of being an assistant deputy minister.
I think throughout my career, the one challenge that I'm still struggling with is that our people are so hard on us. It's not necessarily the fact that they're hard on you because of your abilities. It's they're hard on you because of who you are. So sometimes that's a little trying. I find that quite challenging. Some days I can handle it, and other days I have a great difficulty dealing with it. Other challenges are just that sometimes my time isn't my time, and because of the job being quite highly stressed at most times, I find that I struggle some days only because I know that there's another stressor just topped up with another stressor. So that's a little more challenging. The day-to-day administrative things I think I can handle. It's all the politics of the position sometimes that kind of get caught up in amongst the administrative, and that's kind of difficult to deal with. You know, somebody taught me to do this, and I find it really useful to touch the door downstairs before I leave and say, that's it for work today. And I just learned that recently, and it's really helped. So when I walk out the door, I try to think thoughts outside of work. So for instance, I'll say, oh, well, I need to get this and this for dinner, and once I'm home, I love to read. I'm an avid reader, so I kind of sometimes use that kind of as a way to escape the realities of the world, and that sounds really terrible, but that's my way of dealing with the stressors of the job. The other thing that I love to do is to take my dog for walks, because then I can ground myself in, you know, the environment. And here it's so pretty because there's a trail just behind our house that I love to take her on, and you just oversee a lake, and then when it's frozen I walk out on the lake with her and kind of get grounded again. So it's reconnecting kind of with Mother Nature that kind of helps me. There's extensive travel, but that's one of the perks of the position, is that I really enjoy the travel north. I really enjoy going to the communities and meeting community folks, and it's just such a pleasure because folks are so good. They really appreciate the time that you take to go and meet with them. They think, you know, that if you value them, that you value them because you've gone out to meet with them. And then there's also southern travel. That I find a little trying sometimes because it's long days and long trips, and there's sometimes international travel. That's fine. I don't mind that.
Why did she make the change from teaching classes of students to becoming an assistant deputy minister who is responsible for the Northwest Territories?
Because you can make bigger impacts on the system through policy change than you can on an individual level in the classroom. Because I know that for the very first years that I taught, culture-based education wasn't even a philosophy. It wasn't even spoken of. It was just kind of the activity that you did for 1 week throughout the year to demonstrate that there were cultures in the Northwest Territories that had to be given some reverence. But now culture-based education is an integrated philosophy throughout all the curricula and through programs that are produced at the regional level, and those are changes that can only be done through policy changes. And I suffer the consequences of that because I really went into education to be with kids and to be with students, so I missed the contact, the daily contact with the kids. But I also know how much work it is to be in the classroom, so if I was afforded the opportunity to go back, I don't think that I could, because I wouldn't have the energy level, because 25 kids at my age, I'm not sure that, you know, it's not something that I would aspire to at this point, to going back to. I remember going to the board office and saying that that was what I wanted to do, was to go back to the classroom, but I don't think I would have the energy level. It would be nice to walk into a northern school and know it's a northern school, rather than to walk into a school and say, well, this could be transplanted to metropolitan Toronto. Like this, it would be nice have our schools so unique. A few of them are very different, and you could tell that they're very northern schools, and they're reflective of the student population and their cultural makeup. But we still struggle with the fact that not all schools are there, and my hopes are that someday it'll just be there, and we won't have to struggle with the fact that kids won't be able to see themselves in their schools. The other thing that I would really like to be able to see is that the media is reflective of who we are as well. And I'm not just talking about you know, TV, I'm talking about the newspapers and the electronic media, that, you know, it becomes kosher to chat in Inuvialuit. And you know, like my grandson chats almost every day on the internet, and it would be wonderful if you could chat with somebody in Inuvialuit, you know, with the, if we could do that interchange with Greenland, so that, you know, if we could use modern technology to our benefit and have kids feeling cool about being who they are, and using that very essence of, you know, who they are in modern technology. Wouldn't that be just wonderful?
As a little girl, Pauline was taken away from her family and put into the residential school system. It was a system that treated the children as a group, and the education system did not include information about the children's cultures. This created feelings of inadequacy and isolation. Fortunately, Pauline had Mr. Elliott and Father Poshaw, who treated her and her classmates as individuals, inspired them to be proud of who they were, and taught them that they could excel in anything that they chose to do. The residential schools have closed now, and the curriculum includes the cultures of the students. It's not perfect, but it's come a long way since Pauline was a little girl in Grolier Hall. She chose to learn from these experiences and to work for most of her life to change the system from within. She is still working on the effects of residential school, but she did not let the treatment that she was given by the system as a small child beat her. She learned from its terrible mistakes and has worked to make changes. She has fought to ensure that any little girl walking into a school in the Northwest Territories can be encouraged to learn about her culture, encouraged to speak her language, and to be proud when carrying on her traditions. And at the end of the school day, that little girl can go home to be with her family. That was our program for this week. Thank you for watching SUAANGAN. I'm your host, Janine Blake, and I'll see you next week.